This is your night before news video for your final further maths exam tomorrow. Let's think about what's going to come up. So we've had paper 1, which was our non-calculator exam, and so we know what came up in that. So all I've got here is the topic revision list from Edexcel, and I've gone through and I've crossed out everything that has already come up. So let's talk through the rest and think about what we might see tomorrow. Now, obviously, just a disclaimer at the start, you cannot guess or predict what's going to be in these exams very accurately. We've never had this exam before, it's new, and the exam boards can put in what they choose to put in. All we can do is try and be as best prepared as we can by thinking sensibly about what has come up and what hasn't come up. And there's quite a lot that hasn't come up yet. So you can see here that I've left blank rationalising denominators. Now, although it's a calculator paper, we have seen in the past in a GCSE paper how they have brought in sort of elements of rationalising surds with algebraic terms. So I've left that as a possibility, but not something I would say that you should spend this evening going over. And I've obviously left algebraic indices in there as well, because having a calculator doesn't help you with that, and it would still test you on your rules of indices. Difference between two squares hasn't come up, and my thoughts are perhaps because we also haven't had any of the algebraic fraction questions yet, that perhaps algebraic fractions alongside factorising using difference of two squares could come up, because we know that we always factorise to simplify algebraic fractions or to calculate with them, etc. So you could see simplifying, you could see just operations of algebraic fractions. Linear graphs, so although you did have a question about finding the equation of the perpendicular bisector, which would come under this, including the fact that it was perpendicular, I just thought perhaps there would be opportunity for maybe another straight line linear graph style question. Quadratic graphs, my current opinion on this is that if that comes up, it's potentially going to be a quadratic modelling type question where it's all in context. You might have to solve the quadratic equation, you might have to complete the square to try and find like a maximum or a minimum. So that is possibly something that could come up. Discriminant we haven't seen. I'm kind of expecting it because it is something that isn't in the maths GCSE, that is, but it is in this course. So I think that they might potentially want to test that as a skill. So I'll make sure that we understand using the discriminant. Sketching quadratics will be a possibility, so that would just be making sure that you get all of those key points, the intercepts, the turning point, the correct shape, and you label all of that onto your graph. Now obviously you did have to sketch a cubic, so maybe they'll say, oh, that's that for the sketching, but I've left that as a possibility. And the same for quartic graphs. You had a cubic. Will they make you do a quartic as well? Who knows, potentially. I'd make sure I'm ready. Trig graphs, so none of that has come up yet. So recognising them, sketching them, interpreting them, and also like using them to help you solve those harder trig equations. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Big thing we've missed so far, haven't had any of, is any of this sort of transforming graphs. So translating, reflecting, and the structures as well. It could be asking you just to move a coordinate. It could be asking you to resketch a graph under a transformation. You could be working backwards from transformed points or graphs to try and work out the equations. There's lots they could bring that in there. Circles, I've obviously crossed off finding the radius and centre because we had that lovely last question in paper 1, but we could also be asked to maybe sketch a circle or solve problems involving equation of a circle and other graphs, so thinking about points of intersection, simultaneous equations, or even just the equation of the radius of the tangent to a graph. I'm thinking that obviously we know there was only 10 questions in paper 1, so expecting similar amount of questions again in paper 2. You know, the exam's an hour and 15 minutes, so they can fit in, I guess, less stuff. However, there's an opportunity here, isn't there, to combine couple of big topics, so maybe circles and tangents with discriminants, the idea of there's only one point of intersection, how could you use a discriminant, and maybe a problem solving question to do with both of those. Graphs, still on graphs, exponential and reciprocal graphs, so we haven't had anything to do with those yet, maybe sketching them. With exponential graphs, we obviously have the opportunity to try and take a couple of coordinates and you substitute them in, you can like find the equation of the graph and then you can sketch to prove that you know what it looks like. Non-linear graphs, so estimating gradients, interpreting those gradients, areas under graphs using trapezium rule. So again, just like with discriminant, it's something that's not in the GCSE syllabus. So again, I feel like first time the exam has been sat, they might be quite interested in throwing a trapezium rule question in to see how you've learnt that. Functions, we had quite a bit on that had a big function question that threw quite a lot of things in there with domains. It had ranges, it had the inverse function, a composite function. So I would not expect, I think that's less likely to come up again, but the disclaimer continues. The examiners can do what they want, and they are free to retest the same question topics over both papers if they want to. And then I've just got down here again, transforming functions. It's just to fit in with the bit at the top there. Solving equations, so simultaneous equations, quadratic equations, by factorising, completing the square, all highly likely things, just to make sure that you have honed your skills on those in case that comes up tomorrow. We did have some sort of trigonometry in there, didn't we? But they could always do more, especially now you have access to a calculator. And we didn't have any probability, so hugely likely to come up tomorrow. That's as close to a guarantee as you're going to get, because it's impossible to guarantee, but there wasn't any. So I would be very surprised if there wasn't any in the paper tomorrow. So that could just be, it could be a tree diagram, it could be something algebraic, forming an equation, it could be just a set notation and a Venn diagram. Lots of types of probability questions that could come up. And finally, we didn't have any sort of classic proof. We know we had the question with that involved the circle, and it did involve a circle theorem, but also I think it was parallel lines if I'm remembering correctly. So there was a kind of proof in there. However, we haven't had any other types of proof. So again, I think there's an opportunity there for them to give you maybe an algebraic proof by deduction type question, or even just if it's a proof by exhaustion or a counterexample. Position vectors, we did have a question on, and I would say we did kind of use the distance, didn't we, between two position vectors, but because one of them was completely horizontal, it was, I would say, more basic. So opportunity there for them to bring that back in, but again, I would say less likely than some of the other things we've talked through. Okay, so that's everything that I think is potential to come up tomorrow. Obviously take that information with a grain of salt. All we can do is try and be the best prepared as we can. So looking at all of those things that haven't come up yet is probably more sensible than going over things that have come up already. If you go onto the P drive, you've got all of the resources there listed on the screen. So make sure you're in Key Stage 4 revision and then on Further Maths 2025 folder. And then you've got the same other places to look as well. So on Arbor you'll find all those old lessons, although I do think that'll be easier to navigate on the P drive. If you go onto Sparks Maths, you have the AQA Level 2 Further Maths section. Again, only look up the stuff that's on this list because that will include some things not in our specification, so just be careful with that. And the same for Corporate Maths, they have a Further Maths section, but again, only look up the things on this list to avoid revising something that will not be assessed. And that's it. So good luck with your final last bits of revision this evening. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow to do some final revision before you go into that exam. Good luck.